on behalf of the Institute for Leadership and Strategic Foresight, welcome to So You Want to Be the Chief, a podcast for leaders.
I'm honored to have Master Sergeant Faith Donavon on the show today. She is, I don't know her personally, or at least we don't know each other. We've never met personally, but we've met online, which is the way most people meet anymore. And she's out in Texas and just a super a shining star is what she is. And one day I predict she is going to be a Chief Master Sergeant. And you heard it here first. So Faith, the day that it happens, I will find out. And I will call you wherever you are in the world and say, I told you so. Because the truth is, you hang with the chief and you get promoted. Master Sergeant, Senior Master, you go buy those stripes now because it's going to happen.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate that. And I'm very humbled at the blessing of you saying and claiming it. I'm working towards it, growing and trying to learn every single day. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I've thought about this before, and I don't know how to deploy it. Maybe you can give me some ideas because you're a lot smarter than I. But the book itself, So You Want to Be the Chief, is for chiefs. And sometimes I think that's too late. You should have done this, like we're going to talk about, you and I. You should have done this sooner so that you could be prepared by the time you make chief. And when I started the podcast, one of the reasons I did was I saw a lot of online chatter about, okay, I'm a chief, now what do I do? Which the kind of bumfoozles me because in my age, back in my day, I knew how to be a chief the day I got selected because I had a bunch of, and this is at Maxwell Air Force Base where we have the mecca of PME, and all these old chiefs took me under their wing and made me a chief way before I was a chief or I got the stripes. So I already knew how to do that. And then when I started seeing on social media chiefs saying, I really don't know how to be one. Now you go to the chief school and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure that they teach you what we really need to know, the boots on the ground, airman type stuff. I don't know. I'm not dissing it. I just don't know. But anyway, so anyway, I hope that one day, I don't hope, there is no hope, only do. When you become a chief, you will already be prepared because you've done some interesting homework already. In fact, I think last time we talked, you had done some research and you had a really cool perspective that I suggest, and I'm going to try to inspire you to put into book form because I love writing books. I love reading books. And what you've done, I think, could be a great book, especially for youngsters. So, and of course, at my age, everybody's a youngster. So anyway, welcome to the show. Tell me, I'm referring to this project that you did. A butterfly. What was that had to do with butterflies or spiders or tarantulas or I can't remember the dragons. Was it?
No. So it's the bug's eye view on the enlisted force structure. It basically takes an analogous look at all three tiers and every single individual rank and breaks it down to almost like a bug's life, right? So just a quick little synopsis. An airman basic doesn't know anything. They're a slick sleeve. They are the equivalent of a larva. In the Air Force, they're completely new. They've been reborn once they finish, essentially once they finish BMT. And now they're trying just to learn how to adapt and survive in a new environment, right? As they get higher in rank and they become an airman, now they're a mosquito. They have that one wing. So now they're a mosquito, and their job is to literally suck the life out of the people around them, learning how to do their job, right? As you get a little bit higher in rank, you go to A1C, and dragonfly is the equivalent there for the two wings. Picturesque as well, right? Because the dragonfly has two wings. There's two very large wings on each side. Dragonflies are have a little bit more independence. They're stronger. They're more capable of being able to fly around and do different things, and they have a longer lifespan, right? And then as we look at cocooning of sorts, you become a senior airman. So your senior airmen are now your butterflies. They are the ones who are ready to potentially transition to the NCO tiers. So they have to go through this process, this phase of sort of growing and developing, whether it's as a trainer or even if they complete ALS as a senior airman and become a supervisor, they now have to broaden their wings a little bit more. They need to be a little bit more well-versed. They need to be stronger, and they're going to have to cross-pollinate. They're going to have to pick up things over here and use it over here, so on and so forth. As you get into the NCO tier, now you're looking at how to manage a bug's life, right? So your staff sergeant, the first thing they have to do is learn how to build a net. Because how do you catch all these bugs without a net? Where do you tie the knots? Where do you have to make adjustments? That way your bugs can all stay together and you can make sure that you're training them properly, showing them properly, helping them grow and do everything that they need. So that's a staff sergeant. And then your tech sergeants are the handle. They're the ones that have a little bit more mobility to move the net where they need to, whether it's an activity manager or a flight NCOIC. They have a little bit more freedom and a little bit more experience as the expert, right? The technical expert. Right. They're the ones who go, hey, you know what? This isn't the priority today. Let's move our people over here and get this taken care of so that way we can do. So they are more of the handle. They learn trial and error sometimes, right? But they're the technical expert, not the leadership expert, because that's where the difference is, right? And then as you go to the senior NCO tier, they're the ones who are actually responsible for the greenhouse. And the more stripes you have at the top of the greenhouse, the more responsibility you have for managing resources, personnel, the environment, the culture, whether or not all the right things are being put in place, purchased, oversight on training and all of those things for the net holders, the nets, and then all the bugs that live in that environment, right? So that's sort of a synopsis of the Bugs Eye View of sorts that I created. It's been about 8 years now.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to make an announcement that the book will be out in 2025. I will edit it. I will publish it for you. So okay. Be ready for it. Okay. And I know you're in between a PCS to Yokota Air Base, I think. And so you got a lot of stuff going on for the next couple of months, but I'm a chief for a reason. I will bug you. Did you get that? Let's see what I did there. I will bug you until you have that book out and in my hands, and we can read it and all that kind of stuff. So it's a great analogy. I love how you. I mean, I can imagine what you've done already to describe all of those areas and those parts of a person's life. So I'm anxious to help you, to work with you. And again, I'll give you. I'll find as soon as you hit Yokota, let me know, so that the next day I can start bugging you. Okay, that's fair.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes,
now what is your AFSC? Are you a medic?
No, sir. I'm services by trade. So I'm
services.
I'm old school 3M, because I came in when we were not FSS yet. We were services. So I'm old school 3M, but the current AFSC is 3F1.
Okay, all right. Well, it doesn't matter. You're a great. It's. Let me go back to the chief a little bit. We had a little bit of a discussion, I'll say, a few years back, because someone posted somewhere on social media, when you introduce yourself, do you introduce yourself as Bob Vasquez, or do you introduce yourself as Chief Vasquez, or do you introduce yourself as Bandsman Chief Bob Vasquez, or how do you do that? And the discussion, as I recall, got to the point where, and this is my perspective, you're a chief, period. And I did several, I don't even know, I think I had, 6, 7 different AFSCs in my career, my 50-year career, but it didn't matter. Once I became a chief, I was a chief at different things. I was not just a chief, but I had the credentials to be a chief, a leader in all of those areas that I was hired to do, whatever I was hired to do. So, and as you mentioned, your book idea, the chief needs to know all of that stuff, right? I mean, to be effective, you better know all of that stuff and don't forget that you came in. Well, I guess I was going to say I came in with 2 stripes. No, I didn't. At basic training, I had no stripes, like everybody else. And then you eventually get them. But you need to know that life cycle to be an effective chief, I think, because it's different. Every life and Master Sergeant, it also is different because time is different. When I came in 1972, it was totally different than it is now. Totally,
sure.
Which is, but that was a sign of time, of the times as well. And now, I mean, no kidding. One day I'll share my story with you about how my first additional duty day where Staff Sergeant Rose stuck his finger in my chest, literally, and said, "Do this or I'll kill you." We don't do that no more. You can't even you can't even think that, because they'd have I think everybody has their lawyer on that button. Just push the picture and you call your lawyer. So you can't do that anymore. But anyway, I like the idea, the whole idea of the bugs, and then of course it's a visual thing. But like you said before, the chief needs to know all of that stuff. Now I'm assuming you've been around. How long have you been around?
18 and a half years.
Okay, so you've seen some chiefs, and good and not so good. They're sometimes, or good days and not good days. Sometimes that's what happens. So in all of that stuff, is there something that strikes you about what an effective chief should be like, and that you strive to be? Again, now's the time to start. By the time you make chief, and it's not that it's too late, but by the time, now's the time to be thinking about those things in the book. You prepare yourself so that when you put those stripes on, you're ready to go.
Yes, sir. So I've actually considered this question from several different angles. So I've looked at it even from just the enlisted force structure, looking at the 3 tiers, right? Because once you become a chief, typically the role that you end up filling is either the chief enlisted manager or the senior enlisted leader. And your primary function is to help make sure that the enlisted force to that unit or that group or that wing is provided for and given the correct guidance to move forward, right? That strategic greenhouse effect, right? To go back to the bugs, right? That strategic greenhouse effect of, okay, are we properly identifying all the resources? Do we have everything that we need? Do we have the right people? Are we training people properly? Are we recognizing people for the work that they're doing? Are we checking all the boxes when it comes to not just leadership and performance, but also development and recognition? So I think the first word that I would say is transparent. A chief has to be transparent. You can't, as much as you will always be chief to me because you have been and are a chief, I appreciate the fact that you have given me some insight, even in our small conversations, into who Bob Vasquez is. It helps me understand and respect the fact that you are different, just like I am different from many other master sergeants, and we're supposed to be, right? It helps me understand that you are human. And in that transparency of showing humanness, there's some humility and some, you call it ego, right? That comes with it. Is balancing that is super important, because I'm sure you've heard the difference, right, between a chief and an E9, right?
Yeah.
Is someone that the followers know and that they would willingly follow. An E9 is someone they know and they gotta go because they were told to.
Right. I like that. I like that. Now, and let me stop you there for a second, because I talk often about this. There's a difference between a big ego and a strong ego. The big ego people, them, they flaunt whatever often what they don't have, but they flaunt it anyway because they think they're cool and all that. But a strong ego is required of every warrior, I think, Master Sergeant. To expect you to do what you have to do as a warrior takes a strong ego. And I think that I taught at the Air Force Academy. I used to get people would sometimes tell me, "Hey, you're building them up too much. You're giving them a big head. You're boosting their ego way bigger than it should be." Well, and then I explained, there's a difference between a big ego, and I will shut them down immediately. But as an officer, as a pilot, I want that person to have a strong enough ego to pull the trigger. That I know I was never in that situation, but I have many friends and proteges and colleagues who did do that. I can only imagine how hard, especially the first time, how hard was it to pull that trigger, because at the end of that bullet or missile or whatever, people are going to die. That's a really tough thing when you think about it. So So anyway, there's a difference, and I think I'm pretty sure you agree there. There's a difference between somebody walking around saying, "Hey, look at these stripes," and a person saying, "Don't worry about the stripes. Let me help you."
Oh, most definitely. I think one of the most important lessons I've learned as a leader in general, and I appreciate the big ego versus strong ego. Those are really that's a really profound word difference. But I think the biggest difference that I've noticed is the fact that the people with the big ego are the ones who tell you who they are. The people with a strong ego show you who they are.
Yeah.
There's a difference,
Yeah.
right, between word and action.
Yeah.
So I completely appreciate the difference between those two dynamics, because it matters, especially as a leader, right? You can be a great manager and have a big ego, but to be a great leader, you have to have a strong ego.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So no, I appreciate that. Yeah, most definitely. And part of that comes with, like I said, part of that comes with being transparent. I'm not perfect, and I will never sit in a room and say, hey, whether I stay a master sergeant or hopefully someday grow up and, I get to sit in the room with fellow chiefs, and I make chief. I didn't get here on my own, and I was not perfect along the way. I have a lot of bumps and bruises and scars and bad decisions and good choices and great adventures and horrible assignments. I have the whole gamut in there. That is exactly why I am capable of doing the things I'm doing today. I would not be able to do some of the things I do now if it wasn't for the fact that I've come through some of the challenges that I've had or that I put myself in.
Right.
Right.
And what makes you a better leader, regardless of where you are, and leading is a function; it's not a title. And my personal opinion is, what is a senior enlisted leader? I don't like that at all. But we're not going to argue about that anyway. Because now that's a title, but leading. First of all, like you say, you have to be transparent enough. And what's the other word? Authentic
Yes.
enough to say, I don't know. And sometimes, and I know plenty of, I won't say they're arrogant chiefs, but they're maybe ignorant or inexperienced who think they know everything because they have the stripes. And really, then that's the big ego one that the followers are following only because they have to, and they're only going to do what they have to do and nothing more. Where the other ones don't, they realize, and we've had them on the show in the last few episodes about, hey, I don't know everything. In fact, I know very little. But that humility makes me a stronger person, a stronger leader, because now the people who do know, which would be you guys and tech sergeants and staff sergeants who really know what's going on down there, allows it, and then I think it develops into trust. Now I can trust the chief because I can go tell him we're about to screw up, or I screwed up, or that's bad, or whatever. Because and the chief is always going to be wanting to make the right decisions, but how do we make them? Based on the information we have. And, I remember I worked for a colonel here at the Air Force Academy, Colonel Sanders, not the chicken guy, who once told me the worst thing that can happen to a commander is when his chief stops talking to him.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, you're right, sir, because if I don't tell you what's going on, you're dead. Your career is gone. And it goes down all the way. If the airman doesn't tell that staff sergeant what's going on, who won't tell the tech, eventually we all fail because nobody trusted in each other enough to tell them, hey, we're about to mess up. I messed up, but I fixed it, all of that kind of stuff. And that, again, it builds trust. Starts, I think, with humility, transparency, authenticity, all of that stuff. Yeah, you got to have that. But it starts now, right? It doesn't start, hey, I made chief, so now I'm going to do all those things. Nah, I don't think so. You either started it way back, probably before Master Sergeant, but way back so that you could develop into that identity of a chief. I should write a book on the identity. Right? Let me write. After I help you write your book, I'll get on that, the identity of a chief.
Sounds like a great one.
I'm going to bug you until you have it done.
Hey, I'm here for it, Chief. I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Now, have you had any experiences where you've had where you had a great chief that you just honor, and what did he or she do to deserve that loyalty?
I've had a couple, honestly. The first one I came across in my career, he's now retired, Chief Master Sergeant Terreno Hodges. He was my Chief Enlisted Manager at the 28th Force Support Squadron at Ellsworth. And I was a young staff sergeant who had been through some things, had a couple rough patches, and I showed up to Ellsworth and had kind of decided that I didn't want to be in the Air Force anymore. So I was just going to keep my head down and do my job until the end of my enlistment, and then separate.
Yeah.
And I got tasked for a deployment. And when I came home, within 3 duty days, I became a single parent, and my husband and I were splitting. And typically when you come home from a deployment, your first priority, and any commander knows this, any chief, any person who's deployed knows this, your first priority is to in process. You got all the stuff you got to turn in, all the gear, everything else. I was coming back from Kuwait. And like I said, within three actual calendar days, it wasn't even duty days, it was calendar days. My ex and I were splitting, and I'm now in a house by myself with an 11-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old, right? My chief went to my commander and said, "Hey, sir, we need to pause the in-processing, and we need to let Sergeant Walker at the time take care of her family and get her life straight. We can figure out in-processing and do what we need to later. Let her go talk to her lawyer, let her take care of her personal stuff, so that way she can come back and actually focus after being gone and everything else. Let her get reintegrated on some of this important stuff that's going to slow her down." He didn't have to do that. He could have said, "Hey, in process, and then handle your business. And it's your business, so go take care of it. And, the unit's here to support if you need anything." But, most units, when there's a civil stuff going on, they kind of say, "Hey, just don't get in any trouble. And if you need something, we're here, but we really can't help you." Mm-hmm. Right. I did all my appointments, got everything situated within a couple days. And then I finished my in processing. And while I was on R&R, between the chief, the shirt, and then some of the other leadership team and their spouses, they all came to my house with food. He had created a schedule. Him and his wife created a schedule so that way they could come help make meals. They helped me unpack the rest of the house because we had just moved on to base housing. So my house was literally, I think there was like 60 something odd boxes that still had not been unpacked. My boys were sleeping on beds that had no sheets. Their rooms weren't set up. And almost every single day, someone from my leadership team up my chain showed up, helped me unpack, helped me get stuff situated. A couple of them even brought the chaplain over so that way we could go through the rooms and pray for each room in the house for healing and for new growth and for discernment and all these, like, to talk about taking care of someone's 4 pillars, right? My chief was on it. He was also the one that a year later, when I was frustrated sitting in a special duty because I hadn't made tech for the 7th time.
Oh my goodness.
Because I did 6 years of special duty, which meant that I was testing PDG only. And at the time, with all the testing and the way that the Air Force was doing WAPs and promotions, the first 6 times I needed over 100 on the PDG just to make tech. So once I came back to my career field, I was feeling like, hey, I'll be a little bit better now. I can do SKT and I'll figure it out. And I still missed it by 3 points. Mm-hmm. And I was so upset, Chief, so upset. I did not understand how I missed it. And so I sat in this chief's office and I'm talking to Chief Hodges about promotion and about how do I get better and how do I do this? And I didn't understand it. And I was really frustrated and, venting essentially. Right? Old staff sergeant, right? 7-year staff sergeant sitting in a chief's office, basically just complaining and venting about the fact that I hadn't got my way yet. And he looked at me and said, most profound thing, and it will be in my retirement speech, and I have it literally printed on a wall or on my wall at work. He looked right at me and he said, "You're a staff sergeant, right?" And I was like, "Yes, sir, I am." And he goes, "Then why are you complaining like an airman?"
Mm.
And I said, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Because all I'm hearing is about how you didn't get what you want, but I'm not hearing any questions about like what you need to do better. Did you actually study the way that you should have? Let's look at your test scores. Has somebody sat down with you and actually shown you how to read your test scores so that way you can see what you're doing compared to where you need to be at in comparison with the rest of the career field? And then, do you think you're the best staff sergeant in the squadron?"
Mm.
Like, are you saying you think you are, or like the big ego, or are you strong ego showing us that you are? Because
Yeah.
there's a big, and I got in my feelings when he said something to me, when he said that to me, and he basically said, "Hey, like, stop acting like an airman." And I went home that night and I did a lot of self-reflection, and I walked in his office the next morning and said, "All right, so what do I need to do? What am I missing? What don't I know? Like, obviously I was here for a little bit, but and I don't need to be anymore, right?"
Yeah.
And when you have a chief who takes a staff sergeant who's, or any capital A airman who is feeling disgruntled or feeling like, "Hey, this isn't going the way that I had planned," and they actually sit down and take the time to go, "Okay, but it may not be going the way you planned because you planned it. You didn't actually try to figure out how the system works and how you can do better in it."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So it was very profound. So like I said, I have that printed on my wall at my desk. Are you being an airman today, or are you being now a senior NCO?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. And what was the chief's name?
Chief Terreno Hodges. He's
Okay.
retired now. He's
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Well, I'll have to look him up and thank him for doing that. Yeah. Well, and you
Yeah.
know, and I was going to ask you about someone that maybe wasn't that good, but you know, we know plenty of those. And again, sometimes you're just having a bad day. You know, I've had a bad day. I think I had one in 1983, but otherwise I get over it. And on the other hand, Master Sergeant, as you talk to your peers and to your followers, keep that in mind, that we are, like you just said, with the transparency and the authenticity, we are humans and we do have bad days. Sometimes it's just nothing is happening right. And you know, unfortunately, in the profession that we're at, it's not unusual to find that 3 days later you're divorced. You know, your whole family, your whole life has just gone to crap, and now you got to adjust, and the work has to continue on. So, you know, we're all humans, and the good thing I think is most of us, more than back in 1972, we care about that, and especially as chiefs, you know, chiefs, at least the ones that I know and did know, and in my experience, we stayed pretty busy. You know, we were going 100 miles an hour. So sometimes it was just like you're supposed to go 110 miles an hour and can't make it. So so on again on the other side of the I'll call it the negative side of sometimes being a not so good chief. Life happens to us too. I'm looking forward to having a one of my friends be on this show who talks about and he wrote a book about suicide, you know, and his perspective is that even chiefs, if you know that, do and have, and that's a shame for anybody. But sometimes, you know, chiefs are expected to be Superman, and we're not, or Superwoman, something like that, and we're not. So you know, we're human too. So look, we got a couple more minutes. Some closing thoughts. What are you thinking? And don't thank me for being the first person to congratulate you on making chief. Don't do that, okay? We don't want to jinx it.
I already thanked you for that because you put it into the airwaves. So I'll if that, I look forward to the phone call someday if it happens or when it happens.
Yes.
No, I think the biggest thing that I appreciate is the fact that even now in conversations like this, I continue to learn and grow. So it although I appreciate the opportunity to just give a different perspective, right? I also think every time that we sit in a room and we're actually willing to not just talk about what we know, but listen, we also learn. So I've learned a little bit on this as well. So thank you. I've always valued the few times we have chatted. I've always valued the perspective that you give, because it's definitely different than mine. There's definitely a lot more experience in history. As far as the Air Force is concerned, especially, right, from your side of the table. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit at the table. I look forward to writing a book. Bugs Life, it's coming. The Bugs View, it's coming.
Yeah, I can see it now. And if you can see it, you can make it happen. It's we will do that. Well, thank you again, and good luck with your PCS. I know things just go crazy. My wife and I were thinking about selling our house and moving to Missouri, of all places. And we started the process, and it was so bad. We said, no, we ain't doing this. It's been 22 years since we've done it, and we've grown a little bit older, and we're not doing it again. So anyway, and you have a son who is staying in San Antonio, and one who is going with you to Japan, which will be so cool. And you've heard it a lot of. And it just depends. But a lot of times people ask us military folks, civilians ask us, well, isn't that tough on the families, on the kids for moving all the time? Well, it can be sometimes, but what an opportunity. I have two daughters, and they're now 42 and about to be 40 or something like that. And we still talk about those times because we had 17 assignments in 31 years on active duty. So we moved a lot, but they got to see the whole world, or a whole bigger world than they would have if we hadn't done that. So good on your son. So make it a learning process for him. And have you been to Japan before?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. It's been several decades since I've been there, but I always loved their culture because it was very honorable, centered, respectful, and all that kind of stuff. It's sometimes you especially as old farts, when I was young, we'd laugh at some other traditions and all that. But now that I've gotten old, I think, man, those are some good traditions. That they have traditions at all. We don't have many anymore. We just throw them away because they're not cool anymore. But anyway, have a great move. Have a great 2 years, 3 years. How long will you be there?
Extended tour.
Okay.
So I'm on.
Okay. All right. Well, either way, and stay in touch, because we have now ones and zeros, and we can just look at each other instantly. So God bless you. Thank you for being on the show. Master Sergeant Faith Donavon, one day Chief Master Sergeant Faith Donavon. Mark my words. When you hang with the chief, you get promoted.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks, Chief.